It was said on the seventh day, God rested, when in reality, he casually sat down and left humanity his greatest gift of them all, Nekopara. And God Hand as well, I guess. Greetings, travelers. It's me again, Misshapen Chair, something that I will now be reminding everyone at the beginning of every YouTube video, as I am always astounded at the amount of travelers who don't know how to pronounce my name that consist of 2 Merriam-Webster dictionary entries. I will accept your excuses if English is your second language, or first, but if it's your 17th language, I think you have other problems. Now, if you add a third S in there, it becomes Misshapen Chair, who is my mother. I am thankful for her every day as she is happy, but ultimately doesn't understand my career or hobbies whatsoever. I feel like I said this before. She'll ask me what game I'm currently playing, and when I say something like Death Stranding, she stares off into the distance and starts making dial-up sounds because that's putting 2 words together that don't make no sense. Thankfully, she completely understands the phrase, God Hand. Very catchy. What exactly is God Hand? It is a game that I have referenced at least 3 times, especially while making videos for my primary niche of Hades, where I definitely predicted the future of a sequel. I've never played Gene's theme song, it's called Bronco Buster by the way, that plays when you activate God Mode at any point in a YouTube video. It reminds me of surfing music in the early 2000s, which I have a surprising amount of nostalgia for despite being 177 years old, soon to be 178. It's also an extremely unpopular game and not relevant whatsoever. Please watch Seth's video if you haven't already. My personal experience with coming into contact with God Hand was watching as the color of everything was sucked out of my soul thanks to one of those D words. At one of my lowest points, I thought to myself, maybe I should try God Hand. And when I powered the game up, I realized the developers were not here to make money. They were here to make God Hand. In creative pursuits, money is usually the worst motivator. You have to be motivated by benzomethylcholine and cat girls. I am clearly motivated by the latter. God Hand is not for the faint of heart. In the modern era of accessibility in gaming, I will be upfront by saying this is one of the most inaccessible games of all time. Not just because it was only ever available for the PlayStation 2, or because it's so incredibly offensive in every molecule it permeates, but also because I believe most people will not be able to complete it. This is because they have too much of a thing called self-respect and would eventually and rationally say, this is a massive waste of my time. However, this is one of the best waste of times I've ever experienced. I can only stomach it due to the fact that I am still a masochist. And also playing on New Game Plus, and definitely not emulating it with texture upscaling so I can see what is actually going on. Now let me turn that off real quick. This is the way God intended for us to play. I am also totally not using save states for faster resets to make recording this much easier. But I did do a full playthrough on Twitch without cheating once, which is how I can fit all of this into my moral framework. I do not stream very often, please do not follow me. Whenever you mention hard video games on the internet, the Soulsborne bros rise from their Dorito dust-covered mattress to ask me if I've ever played Souls before. If you ask that, you are clearly not familiar with the Misshapen Chair, as I have beaten all of them, and Sekiro, without Kuro's Charm and Demon Bell active while filing my taxes on my second monitor. With as much recency bias as possible, I can say that God Hand is the hardest game I've ever beaten. It puts Souls and Souls adjacent into the Chuck E. Cheese ball pit. You see, unlike other hard games, there's a surprising lack of fairness. When I can think of another F word, it has a ton of. It'll constantly make fun of you for failure, and it will spit in your face at every little slip-up. It's also fucking stupid. Circling back to that whole self-respect and masochism thing. If you manage to keep persevering though, you'll be rewarded with even more pain and suffering. Speaking of which, God Hand uses tank controls, which seems stupid until you realize that this was directed by Shinji Mikami, who would then go on to direct a small indie game called Resident Evil 4, furthering the conspiracy that all good games are made by like 3 people. If you have that in mind, some of the campier parts of Resident Evil 4 start to make a lot more sense. So if I tell you that this game is Devil May Cry, Resident Evil 4, and Punch-Out thrown into a blender, you would rightfully call me a CEO trying to make a game out of AI and buzzwords. But I can assure you, this game is very real, and it has always been right there among all the other cult classics. Clover Studios really did make every hidden gem in the gaming industry. The plot follows Gene, who got his arm chopped off after trying to respect women. Thankfully, Olivia has a spare arm for Gene with the powers of a god. He must now serve her for the rest of his life, because she will simply chop his arm back off if he ever tries to regain free will. I don't understand putting someone on a pedestal and following their every whim. Of course, I'll do it right away, Vanilla. In his journey as he fights against the scions of the evil Dawn, who spend most of their time dealing with bureaucracy rather than getting things done. A point that the game itself will make fun of. I am also incapable of redubbing God Hand, because I will never be able to eclipse the original writers and English dub delivery. Just listen to this mall ninja explain his entire character.
God Hand is so blasé. Call me the Devil Hand.
You literally cannot make a better dub. The entire story can be summarized as Gene deep sighing as he is told to go kill another demon. After the job, the demons have another meeting and breathe a deep sigh as they send someone else to go deal with him, and then Olivia tells Gene to kill said demon and just go back to the top and repeat. Gene does this all in the hopes that he can eventually get into Olivia's pants, in case you were unsure if anyone in this game has any redeeming qualities. They don't.
Asshole.
The only positive thing is that saving innocent civilians usually has them sane, which most certainly awakens something within everyone who played the game. This doesn't explain why you have to fight a gorilla, or why you can only spank women, or why it sometimes spawns a demon when you knock someone out to randomly punish you even more, but it doesn't have to. God Hand is the kind of story that understands that some things are better left unsaid. It does, however, show you what the maximum potential of veganism is. In my first playthrough, I got stuck for a few hours trying to get past the 3 hooligans who originally chopped off Gene's arm. After my glorious triumph over evil, I was then rewarded with having to fight all 3 at the same time. Those tears are not from pain. And it was after that that Devil Hand showed up and deleted all of those characters in a single tap. This is the only time playing a video game where I have felt genuine fear. I have never seen a game so masterfully introduce an antagonist since Sephiroth's Smash reveal trailer. Azil absolutely lives up to the hype the cutscenes would have you believe. He's like Virgil, but cooler. He is also totally not going to be the final boss of the game. Though spoiling what exactly you're going to fight doesn't really hurt the experience, because you can guess pretty much everything from the first 5 seconds of the plot. Instead, it's the random enemies that aren't major encounters that will constantly have you baffled. Especially the part where you have to do a carnival shooting game to progress, and if you complete it perfectly, you get to bypass the next fighting sequence. Please understand that playing Simon Says was completely necessary to the plot. As these examples demonstrate, there are things God Hand does that no other game has ever tried replicating. I'm not talking about the socially questionable parts in modern context, or even in past context, but the gameplay elements. As you successfully dodge attacks, break guards, and land hits, you will level up. This makes the game harder, but not just by increasing damage. Enemies will also fight dirtier and smarter. They will have mix-ups, they will dodge your attacks, they will counter-hit you, they will add additional phases to bosses, and they'll even read all of your inputs and kill you in about -1 hits. It is an incredibly ambitious, dynamic difficulty setting that tries to always push you to your limits, which is cool and all I guess, but the real thing is that you have the option to prostrate yourself and beg for the game to be made easier, as the crowd will then boo you for being a pussy. Groveling is something that I firmly believe should be implemented in every single video game. I want to be able to beg for games to be made easier when I'm tired after a long day just by swallowing my worthless pride, and it will still probably kick your ass at level 1. The more bullshit you endure, the more cash you will get to buy stronger attacks and have more options to give you the illusion that it means anything, as another basic enemy curb stomps you into the next millennium. It is a well-designed game because with enough perseverance you can beat it with just the base moveset. This is a terrible idea. The only thing I can personally say is that I wish I invested more money into just upgrading the base moveset to its stronger versions for more damage output, because that would have made my playthrough significantly easier. Personal anecdote, results may vary. However, this is also one of those old jank-ass games where you have exploits, such as being able to cancel many moves into a dodge in place to string together for even more combos. Stuff that probably would have been smoothed out if it was developed in a reasonable amount of time and not by working their employees to death. God bless labor exploitation and wage slavery for giving us beautiful ways to further style on their products. Rather than trying to explain a deranged wall scratching on a GameFAQs page or whatever cracked combo somebody cooked up, don't forget to look up your innate techniques that were probably explained in a tutorial that I didn't bother to read. I think the most important ones are the sweeping kick you can perform out of a dodge in place and the mid-air roundhouse kick, which requires good timing while the enemy is airborne. It's why the real secret is just picking up weapons that will cause enemies to experience counterplay. Damn, I'm good. Just remember that even though you have an entire stick dedicated to dodging, bob and weave in place is the correct choice 99% of the time until it isn't. I also enjoy cheesing with roulette attacks to stun lock enemies and abusing invincibility, something that the game will call you out for and isn't necessary to beat it, but I am a firm believer that if the game is playing dirty, so will I. Make sure to find those power-ups in crates like fruits to heal, cards to get more roulette, and porno magazines that will instantly fill up your tension meter. This is not a good Christian game. At least you kill demons and don't molest children. The first major demon that you will fight is Elvis, name not important, who will speak the most fluent Spanish you've ever heard in your entire life. Pendejon! Learning Spanish from Elvis is like learning Japanese by listening to the Persona 5 character name pronunciations in the English dub. He is a sad, balding man who simps after Shannon, who is probably some kind of succubus that most certainly enslaves men, and has a stupid bullshit projectile that makes me very upset. And their leader is that one dude whose name I totally remember and doesn't do anything other than send a robot assassin after you and gets mad when people put their feet on his desk. They might be demons, but that doesn't mean that they don't have manners. That about sums up the lame major bosses of the game. My favorites are the guitar player and drummer because the soundtrack goes hard as fuck with its melodies and lyrics, featuring such classic Shakespearean soliloquy such as, "God powers, keep my pimp hand strong. So trust me, or you won't last very long." As you get further into the game, you figure it cannot possibly get any more difficult, only for them to keep beating you to a pulp. Of the many things God Hand has, mercy is not one of them. It's the kind of game that gives you a rush of pure adrenaline that causes you to choke at the most crucial moment. After beating it, I immediately put that on my resume and wonder why I can no longer get a normal job. At least you can condescendingly gaze down at other gamers knowing that you successfully wasted more time than they did. But it was a good waste of time though, something that you will go back to in your free time for no particular reason. God Hand is one of those games that broke my controller, not because I shattered it in a fit of gamer rage, but because the sheer amount of raw actions being performed at all times wore down my actuators to zero cartilage. Whatever you play the game with, I would advise against being too attached to it. It helped me level up my mashing skills and made me realize that nothing else in life will ever be as demanding as Olivia. I haven't touched on every small Easter egg and tiny detail because it's practically never ending, and I did not want to make another 2-hour video right away. The good parts of God Hand are what made it great, and the bad parts of God Hand are what made it legendary. It's challenging, it's cathartic, it's rewarding, and it's God Hand. It's still distinct in the sea of all video games to this day. As much as I hate remasters, this is a game that deserves a re-release with some low-effort upscaling, faster resets, and better frame rate, so more can experience their favorite Twitch streamers raging at it. Same with Beautiful Joe while we're at it. There are times in your life when a line is drawn as before and after, and for many, God Hand is that event. It truly is a master piece of shit. Now let's get out there and work on those dash cancel combo extensions.